We are live.
Good morning, folks. For those of you watching at home, welcome to this morning's Social Services Committee meeting. I'll ask if the clerk would now take the roll call.
Absolutely. Councillor Weaver,
Present.
Councillor Sless,
Present.
Councillor McCurry,
Here.
Councillor Antosky,
Here.
Councillor Wall,
Present.
Mayor Davis.
Mayor sends his regrets.
Okay. Mayor David Bailey,
I'm here.
Councillor John Bell,
Yeah.
Councillor Mark LaFerrier,
Here.
Councillor David Miller.
Present.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have a conflict of interest to declare this morning on any item before us? Okay, I'm going to just briefly reiterate some of the rules governing what we're doing today. First of all, for county reps, you'll notice that Councillor Martin is in attendance. As we obey City of Brantford rules and procedures, Councillor Martin is allowed to ask questions and participate in debates once all the appointed members to the committee have spoken. I want to remind you to keep your microphones muted. That avoids a lot of embarrassment. Keep your webcams turned on for those of you who are members of the committee. The staff will come and go visually as need be in answer to questions. If we have a boo-boo and we go offline, we have up to 15 minutes to make it right. Otherwise, we are adjourned. Now, let me ask if I could get a mover and seconder for all the items before us today. Moved by Councillor Antosky, seconded by Councillor Weaver. We have 5-1, 5-2, 5-3. Are there any of these items that committee members would like to separate for discussion? Yes, Councillor Weaver.
5-2.
Thank you. Anything else? Okay, then we'll go to the question on the remainder of the items. Would the clerk like to call the question?
Councillor, before we call the
Councillor Bailey, yes.
in the minutes in 5.3,
Yes.
there is a correction just at the very bottom of the amendment. They've got Councillor Weaver described as a county councillor, and then on the next page they're not using county or city when they describe a councillor. So I don't think there's any consistency there, and I think they should change the county to the city, please.
We will note that, noting that you do not wish to have Councillor Weaver on your council.
Oh, you can twist it whichever way you like, sir.
I'll make those corrections.
Thank you.
Yes, now we're going to go to the question on everything not separated. Those in favor? And that looks to be unanimous. Thank you. Councillor Weaver, please proceed with 5.2 as you were the separator.
I was hoping we could have staff sort of present this to us.
Of course.
Good morning, Mary Ellen McClellan, Director of Housing. So you'd like a review of the annual progress of the provincially legislated 10-year housing stability plan?
No, we're on 5.2, which is the Live Well Supportive Housing Program update.
My apologies, sorry.
No worries.
So in terms of the Live Well program, we did apply for grant funding in 2017 and were successful in receiving the 3.2 amount for the capital build, as well as 1.2 million annualized for the supportive services throughout the levels of programs. There are a number of programs within the Live Well program. The first program is the Live Well with High Supports. And of course, that is our new build at Marley Nav that provides 30 individuals with high needs, self-contained apartments with support services on site. That those individual residents moved into the building throughout the month of June, and 17 came forward from our shelter system. So there certainly is a high number of needs within that building. There's 11 hours of support now on a daily basis. We're doing a lot to change that, but that is one component of the Live Well program. There are an additional 15 clients in the second component at Winston Court, which also have some level of high need. And there's an additional support to 15 to 30 individuals at Winston Court who may need more medium levels of support. We do placement at Winston Court. 1 out of 3 would be clients who require those levels of support to be able to live independently. So that's at Winston Court. The third piece, and perhaps one of the most successful pieces in terms of individuals who have graduated out of this program, is the Live Well Youth Program. And these are youth who are receiving high to medium supports depending on their needs, and they're integrated within the communities. So these individuals are receiving rent supplements to be able to live within the communities, as well as day-to-day supports, depending on what their needs are. So this is a mobile team that provides the supports to the youth. What I can say is our successes have been in this program in that 11 of these individual youths have graduated from the program and are living independently in the community. To a lesser degree, we have had 4 adults with those requiring those medium supports that have again graduated from the programs and are integrated into the community or social housing units without that level of support. There's still certainly there's still ongoing work in our newest capital build, the occupants are certainly seeing improved outlooks on their health. The whole intention of the Live Well program is to not only provide those levels of support to the individuals coming from the shelter system into supportive housing, but also to alleviate costs for health and emergency providers. So, and shelter systems, of course. So it's providing those levels of supports, and we believe quite successfully to date.
So if I could ask some questions, Mr. Chair?
Of course.
Thank you. So I'm happy in the report you do discuss a little bit about some of the neighborhood concerns for the Marlene Ave, specific to the Marlene Ave location. I mean, I'm not in that area. I haven't spoken to the folks in that area, so I'm not sure if it's sort of perceived or if it's factual that there are some issues coming from the residents that are living here. Can you just kind of explain to us the processes that we're going through to ensure that community is being kept safe?
Certainly, through the chair. We are aware there are issues at Marlene Ave, and we are certainly dealing with issues as they arrive in an extremely timely manner. What I can say is that unfortunately, COVID has put that additional layer on staff and on the service agency. Initially, move into that particular building, the supportive housing building, was tough because of COVID and the inability to have many of those face-to-face interactions. To date, some of that is alleviated. However, the concerns that we still continue to receive concerns from the neighbor and a neighborhood, and we are in fact dealing with those concerns. What we can say is as staff, we believe most of the concerns to date, and we see this from videos and photographs provided to us, are issues from outside of Marlene Ave. We see it as visitors to the community as being the lion's share of the concerns, not the residents themselves. Not to say that there aren't some issue with the residents themselves, and we are working with Wesley Services to, one, change their hours to more adequately support the residents that are there. We are doing some physical changes to the movement of furniture within the building so that there's good eyesight to the residents at all times. In terms of one of the major things we're doing is we have contacted the fire department, and we're in the processes of perhaps installing mag locks on all of the exterior doors except for the front doors. These will allow those doors to remain closed and only open in the event of an emergency. One of the issues we're seeing now is that people are propping open those exterior secondary doors, and individuals who do not reside there are getting into the community. So that's one thing that we've already received permission for, and we're proceeding with that. We are also proceeding with establishing a camera. We have cameras in place. Unfortunately, because of some of our internal policies, Wesley Services is not able to observe those cameras. We're working with legal and IT to ensure that Wesley Services has access to those videos and is able to identify issues in a much more timely fashion. We are placing more barriers around the community to provide more privacy for neighboring communities. And we currently have security in place over the evening, although we have to come up with a better model, and that's part of changing the hours of Wesley and negotiating with Wesley around those supports. The securities are not sustainable going forward without some changes to that. We're also working with Wesley to ensure that they're not providing services to the homeless community at the Marlene Avenue site. So that continues to be a concern, and we are working with Wesley to look for an alternate location. The Marlene Ave was never intended for that purpose.
And I will keep going since I haven't been told my time's up yet. I'm sure it is, but
Councillor Weaver, actually, there was no one else in the queue, so I've allowed you to venture into your second speaking opportunity. You have 19 seconds left of your 8 minutes.
thank you, Councillor. So I have 2 questions to be answered, so I'm hoping we can do them both. First, have we had to remove a tenant from that location because they're a bad actor or just not participating? And my second question is, I'm concerned about the stigmatism. There was some media reports about the Marlene Ave. It doesn't sound like they were necessarily factual. They were more anecdotal and those types of concerns. I think that's something we need to get ahead of, because I don't want to have backlash when we look at potentially building another type of supportive housing unit. So if you could respond to both of those, please. Thank you.
Through the chair, yes, I have been very closely following the media, and I must agree, much of what is provided is anecdotal, and it's from the eyes of the neighboring community. I can't respond to the crime rates before or after Marlene. I'm sure there has been some increase, but again, we do not believe that there has been a substantial increase from the residents of Marlene Ave. That's certainly not what our evidence is showing us. And we can certainly work with communications to get in front of that those media issues.
And
Thank you
so
very
the
much.
second question was about if we removed a tenant from that location because of
I'm
poor
sorry.
behaviors.
Yes. Through the chair, yes, we have had one eviction from the Marlene Ave community and one notice. So again, the supportive housing building is called and was funded from Home for Good. So the intention is that we remedy those behaviors as opposed to evicting and having someone go back through the shelter system. So our approach is one of corrective behavior. There has been one person that has been evicted, and that was as a result of a substantial health and safety concern.
Thanks, Mary Ellen. Councillor Wall, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair McCurry. My question is just one that I have had raised by a number of different people in proximity to the Marlene Ave apartment. How much control or say or input does the city of Brantford have on the policies and procedures inside of the Marlene Ave building, based on, you know, who's allowed in and then what the rules are once they're inside the doors?
Through the chair, well, we must, one, follow the Residential Tenancies Act. So that's a given. We have to do that. We have an agreement with Wesley Services. And much of those procedures are contained within that contract. Some of that needs to be changed, and we are working with that. We can't violate any human rights issues, but we are certainly working on it is a supportive housing building. So providing the supports and directing those residents to improve their quality of life and direct their behavior is certainly within our ability to do so.
Is it possible to request that some information about like what the rules and regulations are in that building and what we can and cannot do? Is there a way to get a document or some sort of clarity on that that's publicly available? I mean, in the court of public opinion, there are a lot of statements made very boldly online about what we can and cannot do, and a lot of people just don't understand. I mean, I have very good familiarity with the Landlord Tenant Act, and I understand that, you know, this is still somebody's home, but there's some confusion because it's because of its title of supportive housing, and because you know, it's a city-owned facility, and because that they're, you know, the Wesley's on site, about what. I mean, honestly, I'm confused about it, to be perfectly honest. And if I'm confused and I sit on this board and I'm a member of the Social Services Committee, I can only imagine what it's like for somebody who, you know, lives close proximity to the building. Could we get kind of a frequently asked questions or like a statement that's, you know, these are the rules? I think you know what I'm saying. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Yes, through the chair. I think that's a great idea. We can begin to work on that. Again, much of it is a residential. We'll do the sort of the high level Residential Tenancies Act, and then sort of some human rights issues, and then some Wesley supportive housing rules. For example, we don't historically go into a unit and inspect other than once a year in some of our other social housing communities where no issues have been identified. One of the processes that has put in place at Marlene Ave is weekly inspections, and that's part of our supportive piece. So we can certainly do a Q&A that covers off residential tenancies, human rights, and then drills down to Wesley if that's appropriate. If that's what you're seeing.
Yep. Are you allowed to have, is a tenant of Marlene Ave allowed to have guests?
Through the chair, absolutely. They are entitled to have guests. That being said, we are looking at a way to change that process. As I mentioned earlier, the guests do not involve going in the back door at 3 in the morning. So we're going to close down those doors with the permission of the fire department and have them only open in the event of an emergency. Some of the steps that we're undertaking right now is to funnel all guests through the front door. We're going to have a process whereby at 10 o'clock, the systems to allow your guests to enter will deactivate, and residents will be required to go down to let their guests in through the front door. The intention is that we have staff present at that time, and that the tenants of the building will be required to indicate, perhaps by signing, that they will be responsible for the guests that they let into the building at night. So we can't prevent them from having guests. We will make them aware of, certainly aware of their responsibilities, that they are accountable for the behavior of their guests, and we hope to limit the number of people in by those strategies.
Councillor, thank you. That's
Yep. Thank you very much.
let me see, who do I have next? Councillor Laferriere, you have the floor, please.
Thank you, Chair McCreary. Just a quick question. Maybe because I grew up in that neighborhood and I'm on social services, I've had a couple of residents and some business owners reach out to me about some of these issues on Marlene. One of which I just wanted you to talk about, because I've been asked to ask, is around the reported proliferation of shopping carts in and around the area, including a complaint I received from a local business owner who was wondering what the process is for dealing with that. And there's some concerns that that's also related to potentially illicit behavior and theft and things like that, and as a way of transporting goods. So could you speak to that? And I understand there has been some movement from staff on clearing that out and stopping that behavior.
Yes, through the chair. We have been working on the shopping cart issue. my understanding is there have been some shopping carts that have sort of accumulated at Marlene Ave, and staff are dealing with those issues. They've contacted the business. We've asked Wesley to work very closely with the residents of Marlene Ave to move away from perhaps having those shopping carts. Now, again, that is a process. Many of the residents, I shouldn't say many, but some of the residents at Marlene Ave, the shopping cart is part of how they've historically carried their valuables, and we're helping those individuals to move away from those shopping cart issues. In some cases, I know that Wesley has allowed storage of those shopping carts in the bike shelter component, which is not visible to the community, but that is part of a process to work away from the shopping carts, but it cannot be immediate.
So just to follow up, so these aren't shopping carts that are being used to transport stuff from a neighboring shopping center. When I grew up in public housing, there was a deal with the Mr. Grocer across the street from the public housing build where we could bring our carts up into the elevator and leave them in the hallway in the specific spot, and then staff 3 times a day from the grocer came and picked them up and brought them back to the grocery store. It was for convenience and accessibility. That's not what's going on here, correct?
Through the chair, it's actually twofold. There may be some of that. I mean, it's all of the individuals that reside in Marlene do not have access to vehicles. So there may be some of that, using it as a way to bring their groceries home. But I think the more serious piece at Marlene Ave is not too many, but a few of the residents continue to keep their carts that they may have had when they were actually homeless or living through the shelter system. And again, that's a process that we're working through, specifically with one individual, trying to reduce the hoarding that he has and trying to eliminate the belongings that he has in the grocery cart right now. But it is a process we're working on.
And my last question, if I still have time, Mr. Chair.
You do.
So one of the things we see in social work around the transition from homelessness to housing is issues connected to trying to help folks who are being transitioned to housing, trying to help their compatriots who are still homeless, and we see it ruin a lot of potential housing for folks where. If there's an inspection, or sometimes there's something horrible that happens like a fire and you find out that 8 people were living in a room for 1. With the positioning of Marlene Ave being in the area where there's the most homelessness in the community, is that an issue that is creeping up? Because again, these are human beings who have friends, who have people they care about on the streets, and sometimes people that are manipulating them or using them for shelter. But it can ruin their placement. It can ruin their housing. Can you speak on this dynamic and what's happening in this area with the supportive housing being in the center of town where their colleagues, for lack of a better term, are still having access to them?
Certainly, through the chair. I certainly believe that there has been an increase in their friends coming to the building. That's clear. They may have been closer to the downtown core and they're moving over to Marlene Ave. And yes, they are vulnerable and do let their friends in. We've had certainly had reports of individuals trying to get into the building at 3 and 4 in the morning. And we're aware of that, which is why the efforts to strengthen the facility with cameras and not allowing residents to prop open their doors and limiting the visitors. But yes, we have seen an increase in friends coming to that building. But we also have to look at, we don't want Marlene Ave to be used as a center to provide resources and supports for other homeless individuals. Although we believe that needs to happen, we never envisioned Marlene Ave to be that center. And so we have to be able to stop some of that activity. So yes, we do see an increase in their friends and visitors coming to the building, and we're making every effort to reduce those numbers.
Thank you,
Councilor.
Thank you for
Councilor Miller, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Mary Ellen. I want to ask about the operating costs. It's just over 1.2 million funded by the province. What is included in that operating cost? I'm gonna, you would have your normal things such as utilities, but does that also include all the staffing that's associated with these residents?
Through the chair, absolutely. The annualized 1.2 million, which is unfortunately a little bit less than that now, it covers all of the services for staff, the supportive services, the rent supplements for those youth. It's all encompassing. It's some supplements and supports for the residents that live there. Not just Marlene Ave, but the other programs as well.
Okay, and the reason I'm asking because you do a quick calculation that's over $40,000 per resident, and I'm looking at this Marlene Ave, and you're thinking, well, is this a model we can copy somewhere else? But it seems awfully expensive. Is it sustainable in the long run? What are your thoughts on that? Do you think this is a sustainable program?
Okay. Through the chair, I think, yes, I'm not going to say it's not an expensive program, but it's certainly a lot more cost effective than our shelter system and those offshoot agencies such as the health system and the emergency system that in a perfect world wouldn't be responding to those homeless individuals. So it's much more cost effective than our shelter systems.
Okay, fair enough. And I'm sure it's more cost effective than our prison system as well. So, or other things. So, okay. Thank you, Mariano. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor, thank you. Next up, we have Councillor Sless.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mary Ellen, when someone's evicted, where do they go?
Through the chair, that unfortunately is the sad part. It's not our intent to ever evict anyone from Marlene Ave, but unfortunately it has happened, and that was as a result of a significant health and safety violation that would have put others at risk. There are some members of the community that from time to time, there is no place that they can go. My understanding is it's only a handful of people, but often those individuals have already been excluded from our shelter system because of those same behaviors. There are a handful of people that do not fit into our shelter system or our supportive housing model. Not many, but unfortunately that is a reality.
Okay. And secondly, with the cold weather coming, are you anticipating a higher incident rate of people couch surfing or however they start infiltrating into the building with friends and folks they know?
Through the chair, we hope to see a reduction in that by working with Wesley, stopping the services on site, changing some of the physical barriers in that community. Those are all underway now. We hope to see a reduction of that. The ability to be able to close those secondary doors in the building is going to be huge. That's where we believe individuals are getting in.
Okay. And finally, if I could, Mr. Chair, if we replicate this building somewhere else, are there things we've learned by building this first one that we would change when we're doing a second one?
Through the chair, I think absolutely. We've learned many things. We've learned that 11 hours of support is not sufficient. That's probably been the biggest learning. We've learned that security is paramount, and the number of cameras required in the building has to triple from what we anticipated when we were designing the building. We've learned that we have to have a much more fluid and honest and open understanding with whatever service provider we select and what our intentions are, and some abilities to quickly be able to change the processes within our contract. So not to tie ourselves into a contract. We have learned, sorry, not to tie ourselves into a contract is not what I meant, but not to tie ourselves into specifics of the contract, to have some ability to have more fluid movement. So there's a number of learnings. We're still learning. We need to provide social space that is away from the neighboring communities. And that is something that certainly we'll undertake at Marlene Ave. We just don't think the timing is right now to install the gazebo we plan on installing there because of we don't want to encourage gatherings. But once our pandemic situation has calmed down, we intend to put a gazebo up away from the neighboring communities, and hopefully that will be a hub for the residents, as opposed to hanging out in the trenches along Marlene Ave. We hope to have a community garden there as well. So those are activities that we intend to put in place. But yes, to sort of go back to your question, lots of learnings. This is still new. I'm sure there will be new learnings, and we would have our mag logs already as part of our process.
Thank you. One final, if I've got time, Mr. Chair.
You have, Councillor.
Okay, thank you. Are we experiencing any internal damage to the units? I know they were kind of built in a heavy duty manner, but are we experiencing problems with having to go in and repair things?
Through the chair, unfortunately, yes, that has happened. Not in all cases, but we've had certainly destruction of units already. We've seen that, we saw that within the first few weeks. We did, again, as you said, everything was built to a higher level or inability to destroy. We had super heavy duty cabinets, and unfortunately someone has removed the cabinets already, but they've been installed. We did anticipate some of that, and we did budget for that. These are individuals that in many cases haven't had their own residential space for quite some time. So it's a lot of learning for them. Incidentally, we've had really good success with our meetings. Housing staff have gone in and actually had meetings, physical distancing meetings with the tenants, and indicated, this is your home. You need to be responsible for your home. This is not a frat house, and some of these behaviors cannot continue to happen. What we saw after that meeting of some pretty frank discussions, we actually saw some of the residents going out into the hallway and cleaning up, and we actually noticed a few of the residents washing down walls, which were all really good. Hey, taking ownership of the community. We intend to continue those meetings. We continue to work with the residents. We want them to take ownership, but it is a process.
Okay,
Thank you,
thanks,
Councillor.
Mary Ellen.
Before I go to Councillor Martin, I have a few questions as well. Since I don't have Councillor Carpenter here to run the stopwatch for me, I'll have to do it myself. So, Mary Ellen, specifically, what was the health and safety violation that resulted in the eviction?
I don't have all of the details, but it was fire related.
You mean somebody had flammable liquids in their apartment?
I don't think it was flammable liquids, but I believe it was removal of a smoke detector and then starting there was a small fire. There were some serious safety issues there.
Okay, in as much as it's a sheltered location, does the Residential Tenancy Act apply with respect to notice periods, or are we in sort of a special condition with respect to evictions?
Through the chair, no, they all apply. So we do have that ongoing issue with the tribunal.
With respect to overnight guests, do we have regulations with respect to prohibiting overnight guests in folks' apartments?
Through the chair, we couldn't do that. That would be outside of the Residential Tenancies Act, as well as the Human Rights Code. That being said, we can and will try to put parameters on that, but individuals, including those in supportive housing, are entitled to overnight guests.
With respect to weekly inspections, certainly proceeds of crime and things that are illegal can result in folks being evicted. So are we conducting a cursory search for drugs and weapons as we do the weekly inspections?
Through the chair, a cursory view would be looking at the unit, not going through closets, of course, or anything like that, unless we had reason to believe there was damage to the interior of the building. We would deal with any aspect. I mean, we like to think we have a zero tolerance on crime. So if anything is noted that is crime related, we will act on that with a notice. And then through the notice process, we would try to correct that behavior. Because individuals get a notice doesn't necessarily mean that they get evicted. And in fact, in most cases, they do not.
So evidence of crime is reported to the Brantford Police Service?
Yes.
And you mentioned magnetic locks on the doors. How long will it take before the folks living there manage to overcome that little gem?
To the chair, I honestly don't know. This is new learning for us. The mag lock system is working very successfully in one building in Hamilton, which is where we're trying to get some of our learning from. That has alleviated the number of residents residing in that particular building in Hamilton. So we like to think that it will be successful here as well.
Are folks coming through the windows as well?
To the chair, I'm not aware of that.
Because that was a big issue at Winston Court. I don't know if that continues down there, but it was a big issue quite some time ago. So if you could inquire about that, Mary Ellen, let us know. And that concludes my line of questioning. Councillor Martin, you have.
You put yourself on mute before you finish there, Mr. Chairman, but thank you. Mary Ellen, is there a limit on the number of guests a tenant can have?
Through the chair, well, there are no limits in terms of can you have 4 or 5 people in to visit, just like any other apartment within your community. We intend to put those limits on it, and we understand that it is on the edge, but we intend to put those limits by making sure that people come through the front door, having those discussions with the residents as they walk in the front door. You know, is this your friend? How long are they staying? Are you aware you're responsible for their behavior? Are you aware that you can't have anybody living with you? And there's a fine line between having somebody reside with you and visiting overnight. So there's that line that we have to manage.
Okay, and will you stop people from having the same guest 7 nights in a row for weeks at a time?
Through the chair, we would take the position that that is living with, and we would deal with that, yes, as we do, and we use that for every other social housing as well. But again, it's a fine line between, do we think that individual is living there? Normally, in other social housing communities, we ask for addresses of that individual that's living there. Are they residing there, or are they visiting? In this case, they may not be able to provide that address, so we'll use other measures. But we would take the position that if they're visiting 7 nights in a row, that they are living there.
Okay. The police board received a report on Marlene Ave that paints a little bit different picture than what you do. There's indications of units housing 5, 6 people living there, even though there's only 1 person registered to live there. And the other thing that come up is apparently one of the units is being used as a warehouse for stolen bikes. Have you come across anything like that in your inspections?
Through the chair, I'm not aware of one unit being used to store any kind of warehousing. I'll certainly look into that. I wasn't aware of that, nor is our staff aware of that. So we will talk to Wesley and ensure that isn't happening. And if it is happening, we will deal with that. And sorry, the comment in terms of the police report. Well, I can't really comment on the police report itself in terms of where they get their statistics, but we as staff do not believe that there are that many residents there at night. We're not there at night. Right now we have a security at night, which is costly, but we do have security at night. We don't believe or are unaware that that many people are residing there at night. We do know that people are entering and we're not aware. And again, we're stopping those as quickly as we can. We intend to have Wesley Services change their hours. We want more presence at night. We may have to have a new process. Unfortunately, through our budgeting system, we may have to come forward, but we do need to change the way we provide services to that community through the evening hours.
Okay, so one of the other comments was that some of the back doors had been crazy glued so that they wouldn't lock. Your fire system, is that monitored by the fire department?
Through the chair, absolutely it is. No doors have been crazy glued to my knowledge, but I will certainly ask the question again.
The once the mag locks go in place, are you going to discontinue monitoring of the fire alarm temporarily till you see if the residents catch on that they can unlock them by pulling the fire alarm? Because you might have multiple false alarm calls there. I'm not sure whether Brantford's charging for those yet or how much, but that could add up very quickly if they are.
Mhm. Through the chair, we've talked about that. We don't have a full solution yet. That may be one of the routes that we have to go. We hope that doesn't happen, but those are the discussions that we'll have with the fire department. That being said, keeping the building safe in the event of a fire is our primary concern, of course.
Yeah.
So it's a balance, but we will work with the fire department to do everything we can to keep those doors locked. We will work with the residents. We will add costs to their account. If there are costs generated by a false alarm, we will add those costs to their account. That being said, their ability to pay off those accounts are limited, but we will certainly try to send the message in every way possible.
Thank you, Councillor.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Wall, you have the floor.
Sorry, thank you very much. Through you, Chair McCurry. If a visitor, like noting that there are staff on site, and this is a supportive housing facility, if somebody who doesn't live there had a guest visit them, and while that guest was there, that guest expressed the need for help or wanted to get support or wanted to get help, whatever. I think you know what I'm trying to say. Is that something that's available to the guests? Or if it's not, can it be?
Through the chair, that's actually, again, it is available to the guests. And I think that's what's happening now. People are going to Marlene Ave for supports. The Wesley Church has closed because of the pandemic. So that avenue to get supports has closed, and individuals are heading down to Marlene, not necessarily as guests, but they're also going down there to get services. So we're actually trying to put a stop to that. That was not the intent of Marlene Ave. So we're working with Wesley to say, hey, you need to have a place to provide those services. Now, for the residents of Marlene and their guests, if their guests exhibit concerns, then we'd like to think that Wesley, in our new world where they're not providing all the services, would be able to provide that preliminary level of service and direct those individuals to the appropriate location to receive help.
Could you prepare maybe like a statement, or like not statement, but like some information for this committee regarding the number of people who have requested or have been assisted that are not residents of Wesley or of Marlene Ave?
Through the chair, we can certainly work with Wesley to provide that information, yes.
And then my final question is, could you just elaborate a little bit on the relationship between Marlene Ave, Rosewood House, and the Salvation Army? Are they all working perfectly together in unison, or are they acting siloed as separate entities? And maybe it's a little bit much to go into here today, but maybe for the next meeting, we could have something that talks a little bit about how those three entities are working together to help people.
Through the chair, yes, we could certainly come back. I can't say we do have Wesley staff working with homeless individuals who might be candidates to move into supportive housing. So that level is happening, but we can come back to you with more information in a subsequent meeting.
That would be
the relationship.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. I do have a few more questions. Councillor Weaver, I see you have your hand up, but I believe you've exhausted your 8 minutes of speaking time. But it was a good try, and I've done it myself. Mary Ellen, I'm curious about our relationship with Wesley, especially when I hear that social services staff have no knowledge of what the police force says is going on in the building. What frequency is Wesley reporting to you?
Yes, we have ongoing meetings with Wesley. They have increased exponentially. They are reporting stats to us. That's how we sort of populate our reports to the ministry and whatnot. They report, we ask for ongoing information, and we've actually changed our requests for information from Wesley. we're working very closely with Wesley to change that, to better the relationship and to offer more services. We were tied into a contract, and we are looking to navigate through some of those areas and change what isn't working and keep what is working well.
What does their contract say about regular reporting to the city of Brantford? Do they provide us with an indication of every incident that happens there? Do they provide us with a summary of their weekly unit inspections? I'm thinking there's maybe an information gap. Can you speak to that, please?
To the chair, there absolutely is an information gap. We do receive statistics from Wesley in terms of the number of individuals they're supporting, the types of services they offered. Not every incident, I'm sad to say, is being reported, and that in part is due to their inability to access our camera systems. And we are working on that. That we believe is going to make a great deal of difference. By the time Wesley becomes aware of a serious incident, it's after the incident's been reported to the police, a couple of days have gone by and we get back, but they need to have access to the cameras at Marlene Ave. And we are working with legal and IT on that as we speak.
What about summaries of their unit inspections?
They are providing summaries of their unit inspections that allows us to understand what's happening there in terms of day-to-day repairs or major damage.
What about evidence of criminal activity?
That's not something that I'm aware is being reported on a regular basis. Those are conversations that we can continue to have with Wesley.
It might be useful for members of the committee to see the redacted version of the contract that we have with Wesley. I wonder if you could facilitate that for us.
Through the chair, absolutely. We are also in the process of creating a new, going out. The contract is coming to an end, so it's an ideal opportunity to change our requirements as we're going out for RFP.
Now, is that a contract in which we specify every single requirement and every deliverable that we have as a corporation, or is it a loose-ended essay type response that we're getting back from folks, and then we really don't have a list of deliverables other than what they provide us?
Through the chair, you are right. It's not giving us exactly what we require. That those items will be corrected in the new contract.
Okay, I wonder if you might also provide the committee members with either the draft or the finalized version of the offering that we're putting out.
Yes.
That's super. Thank you very much. Is this your second time? Councillor Martin?
Yes, just one quick question.
I'm just asking, is this your second time or are you trying to put one over on me with a third time?
No, this is my second time. I just
Okay,
have one
fair
quick
enough. Thank you.
question. Marnie, you indicate that Wesley doesn't have access to monitor the cameras. Who does?
Through the chair, city staff.
And how often do they monitor those?
Unfortunately, not only when there's an incident. In all honesty, we don't have the staff to be able to go and monitor cameras unless there's an incident that we're specifically looking for. The whole intention was that we would turn the day-to-day support services to the contracted agency. And because they're not able to see issues in a timely fashion, there is a lag, and we're correcting that.
Okay, and how long do you keep the recordings for?
Through the chair, I'm sorry, I'm not aware of that. I believe we keep them for a week, but I can certainly check on that.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor, thank you very much. Councillor Antosky, you have the floor now.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mary Ellen, I'm wondering if this committee can get a copy of the police report that was created and maybe going forward, any of the reports that relate to Marlene Avenue that are discussed at the Police Services Board.
Through the chair, we can certainly request that information.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Last call for speaking opportunities, guys. Seeing none, we will go to the vote on the item. Those in favor? And that carries. Thank you very much. We have no resolutions before us today. I don't have any notices of motion. Now it's the time of the day when we can all ask our questions. Do folks have questions for staff? Councilor Ferrier, go ahead, please.
And just a quick one. I noticed that the Connect to Skills program has undergone a change in name. I'm wondering if there are any other changes related to that that staff might know about. I'm still volunteering with them regularly, but just wondering what's the deal there? Was it a change of funding, or if it can't be answered this meeting, maybe in a future meeting? I know it's workforce planning as well, but if we can get some of those answers here, because I think it's a great program that we all support, but I'd like to know what's going on behind the scenes there.
Will staff be prepared to answer that now, or will that come to us in a memo?
Hi, good morning. Aaron Wallace, Acting General Manager of Health and Human Services. I don't have that answer at my fingertips, but I'll get it back to this committee for sure.
Has clerk staff captured the question?
Yes, sorry, we have, yes.
Thank you very much. Before I go to Councillor Martin, I do have a question as well. There's an item on tomorrow's Police Services Board which indicates that there is a problem with respect to folks originating outside of our community who are accessing our social services and making great use of our police services. And in the report, it indicates that our staff in the Social Services Department have furnished information to the Brantford Police Service, which enables them to make this report. And I'm not expecting an answer now, Aaron, but I would like to get a copy of whatever, have it circulated to this committee of whatever our staff prepared to submit to the Brantford Police Service to fulfill the request that they made, okay?
Yeah, through you, Chair, certainly we'll do that.
Thank you. I don't see anybody before Councillor Martin, so Councillor Martin, go ahead, please.
Thank you. I have several questions, and they're detailed enough. I don't expect an answer today, but if we could get it emailed and copied the rest of the committee. What I'd like is what the total cost in 2019 was for repairs to private property, i.e. hotels, motels that homeless people were put into, that kind of thing. The total cost of repairs for damage caused by people placed there by Brantford Social Services or their guests. And the second one, what was the total cost in 2019 for repairs to City of Brantford housing caused by deliberate abuse from residents and or their guests? And the third question is, how many people who have done damage to our housing are currently on our waiting list? And if I can just explain the reason for that is we have a very long waiting list, and if that list could be shortened by removing people who willfully damage the units we place them in, people who do deserve housing can get it much sooner. So I'd like to see that information if I can.
Thank you, Councillor. Emma, did you catch all that?
Yes, I did, Chair McCreary.
There are two things that I want to reiterate, Emma, so I make sure we capture them. One is the request for the copy of the Wesley contract at Marlene Avenue, redacting, of course, any proprietary information. And the second is a copy of the request for proposal for services at Marlene Avenue, which may or may not be currently on the street, okay?
Absolutely.
Okay. Anything else, guys? Then I will thank you for your participation and declare that we are now adjourned. Have a good day.
Have a good one, guys.